Donald Trump is killing, thousands of Americans by giving them duff advice, and his macho, I'm all right, look at me, I've survived COVID, is an absolute buffoon. He has no place in the White House. He's an embarrassment, and he should be ashamed of himself.
Angela Rayner can't stop making a fool out of herself in the worst possible ways.
Angela Rayner, he should be ashamed of himself. He's a buffoon. He's killing thousands of Americans. I mean, yet another cabinet minister who's going to have to eat humble pie when Donald Trump comes on his first maiden trip to the UK.
Is she a loose-lipped liability that Starmer will soon get rid of?
Conference change has begun.
Yep, that raid on private schools, stripping our poorest pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, people selling up in fear of Rachel Reeves' budget in October.
Almost everything she says ends up humiliating her like Labour's designated clown that's all talk and no action.
James, it's funny, isn't it? They act like a load of pathetic, sixth-form debating society leftists when they're in opposition. They were in the shadow cabinet, though. They weren't just, odds and sods on the back benches. And now they're in government. Like, it doesn't matter. We're making the calls. We're having great diplomatic relations. I kind of think with someone like Donald Trump, he'll be like, yeah, whatever. I don't think that man actually bears a grudge.
Throughout her time in opposition, Angela Rayner has said some incredibly deranged things and has never faced the consequences for them. Sadly, that's now how the government works, and now she's running around trying to escape accountability. Labour, especially Angela, have a tendency to behave like angry toddlers, and it's not a good look, especially when the future of this country and key alliances with America are on the line.
But I'm pretty sure that the Trump machinery, or people who are now going to be occupying important positions in the White House, might kind of be looking at Britain with a slightly different view.
Yes, certainly. And I mean, back in July, I interviewed Woody Johnson, who was the first ambassador in Trump's first term from America to London. And he's tipped to make a return if Trump takes up the White House, obviously, in January, and now points him for that position. And he was telling me that, people will remember those comments.
Trump doesn't care what Angela or any of the Labour ministers have to say. In fact, he has proved time and time again that they're a bunch of nobodies to him. The problem here is that not everyone is Trump. In what world does Angela think that Trump's people in the White House will forgive and forget the disgusting remarks she has made? The height of shamelessness is astounding, and Starmer is quiet about it. And no wonder anyone would be silent if they had to defend what Angela said.
Donald Trump is killing, thousands of Americans by giving them duff advice, and his macho, I'm all right, look at me, I've survived COVID, is an absolute buffoon. He has no place in the White House. He's an embarrassment, and he should be ashamed of himself.
Buffoon, ashamed of themselves, embarrassment. I think that woman needs to look in a blimmin' mirror. Maybe Lord Ali can afford to buy her one.
Angela has never gotten off her high horse as she parades around pretending to be righteous and bashing every single person who disagrees with her. What are the implications of making such idiotic remarks about the President of the United States? Angela has no idea how deeply she's in trouble, but she'll soon find out. The hypocrisy here is that the person getting freebies from Labour elites is calling others a shameless buffoon. Perhaps Angela could use some self-reflection.
Talking about the clampdown on free speech, Elon Musk has gone to town on that one. Joe Rogan, the biggest podcast that you could listen to in the world, has been really making a big noise about what he sees as authoritarian rule in the UK. Add to that these extremely sort of toxic, irresponsible, reckless and unprofessional comments. I don't care whether it's coming from someone on the opposition benches and what position they held or didn't hold. It's just not becoming of an elected member.
We're already seeing the effects of such idiocy that Angela and Labour are known for. Many people who have incredible influence are starting to call them out, and it's ruining our reputation as a nation. As if Elon Musk completely destroying Starmer and his gang wasn't enough, now Joe Rogan has joined in too. And they're not wrong to put these things out. A politician, especially the Deputy Prime Minister, is supposed to have some semblance of common sense. She doesn't seem to know when to speak and what to speak. Angela Rayner has made a complete joke out of such a prestigious position, and to Americans, it looks like a spoiled child running around.
It is very short-sighted to make these kind of comments about a major world leader if you're going to have to end up working with them. Now, I think that, as you say, Donald Trump obviously is someone who can move on, who can be a bit transactional, and so there's hope there. But I think it's interesting what it means for other people around him in his team, particularly when it comes to some of those intelligence and sensitive matters.
Labour has always made anti-Trump remarks, and Angela Rayner has made the absolutely worst ones. Not only is it a moral blunder, it doesn't even make sense strategically. Why would Labour let Angela Rayner make remarks like that, knowing that it could potentially ruin our economy? That's not an exaggeration. If Trump doesn't give us a good trade deal, the tariffs will ruin us. Imagine the outrage if that were to happen just because Angela couldn't keep herself in check. Now, Starmer is so desperate that he's doing everything he hates to fix things with Trump.
So this is going to create a bit of a headache for the Labour Party because they're probably going to have to go and cosy up to Nigel Farage a little bit if they want to have an interlocutor who could be quite effective in that position.
Back in May, there was reports actually that Nigel Farage had been very important in facilitating that conversation between David Lammy, then the Shadow Foreign Secretary, and JD Vance, and getting those meetings over the line. And
Starmer hates Nigel Farage, but thanks to Angela Rayner, he has to play along and be nice to him. Why? Because Trump respects Farage. The President of the United States is more likely to listen to Nigel Farage than Starmer, and that's just shameful to say the least. It isn't just Angela Rayner that's the problem child of Labour. The whole party is trying to make an enemy out of Trump and will have to suffer for it. Makes you wonder if there's any sense left in Labour.
I mean, there are an awful lot of backtracking people these days going around, aren't they? Let's have a look at Angela Rayner for a start. She's somebody that we hadn't mentioned up until now about Donald Trump, but Angela Rayner didn't have much to say either.
It'd be hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. The mighty Angela Rayner, who didn't shy away from making outrageous comments about Trump, has been really quiet lately. That's because Labour's in crisis mode now that they realise how badly they've messed up. Who would have thought saying idiotic things like an angry teenager is not a good idea? They can try to cover it up as much as they want, but the truth's out for everyone to see.
Angela Rayner, he should be ashamed of himself. He's a buffoon. He's killing thousands of Americans. I mean, yet another cabinet minister who's going to have to eat humble pie when Donald Trump comes on his first maiden trip to the UK.
Among everything, it is incredibly satisfying to see Angela Rayner being humbled brutally. It's as if she's forced to mince her words, but that raises the question, who's telling her to behave? Has Starmer finally woken up and realized that any more mess in the economy will lead to his government being thrown out the window?
Yes, and they've been behaving like sort of grumpy teenagers, student politicians shouting about everybody they disagree with being a fascist, being a Nazi, all this kind of abuse. And it's very foolish in various ways. I mean, obviously, America's our important ally. It's crucial for us to try and get a trade deal with America. If we do, then we can have more free trade, and that, as any economist will tell you, is an important route to prosperity.
Throwing around words like that, accusing people of heinous ideologies, is just so stupid on many levels, especially when it's our closest allies. Angela Rayner has no idea how closely we rely on America and how important that partnership is. Every economist there is, except the fake ones like Rachel Reeves, will tell you that trade with the USA is key to making our economy boom. And that's just the national interest side of things. There's an equally bad moral case to be made here.
It's obviously, in terms of British national interest, it's an extremely unfortunate that we've had these things. But in any case, going around accusing people of being Nazis is actually insulting to the memory of all those people who were killed by Hitler. I mean, it trivializes it, and also it's crying wolf, because if which occasionally happens, there are genuine neo-Nazis that people should be alerted to in different parts of the world.
If everyone is a dangerous extremist, then nobody is a dangerous extremist. These words lose their meaning when they're overused by the likes of Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer. It's as if Labour is crying wolf, and when there is an actual extremism problem, nobody will believe them. It just goes to show how fragile her mindset is, that she has no problem belittling the suffering of so many people just to make a political jab at Donald Trump. Unfortunately for Labour, there's some very obvious consequences to that.
Is that Donald Trump will now treat David Lammy as his kind of, personal slave, because he'll basically know that Lammy will do anything to get back into his good books.
Oh, it leaves us in a humiliating position. It's also not very smart politics to go around if you're trying to win over people. Throwing insults at them isn't a way of converting them to your viewpoint.
Trump has the entire Labour Party scared without even doing anything. They dug themselves into this hole, and Trump will take advantage of that. Just wait and watch how Angela Rayner and Starmer will scurry to get into Trump's good graces and how he'll toy with them. Do these people have no sense of politics? This is bound to happen when you're throwing insults. Of course, the situation got much worse when Starmer tried to play smart again.
And it's not just, the likes of Lammy and Angela Rayner. It's Wes Streeting as well. Wes Streeting said in 2017, Trump is such an odious, sad little man. Imagine being proud to have that as your president. Ed Miliband in 2016, racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper, just won the presidency. And Keir Starmer, of course, the leader, said humanity and dignity, two words not understood by President Trump. And that's not the end of it. He also said in 2019, an endorsement from Donald Trump tells you everything you need to know about what is wrong with Boris Johnson's politics and why he isn't fit to be Prime Minister. It's not as if it's like one thing you have to apologise for. It's a litany of continuous abuse.
How lunatic is it to try and interfere in the foreign elections of the United States and expect to get away with it? Unlike the nasty comments, Trump is actually mad about this action by Starmer, and there will definitely be punishments for that. Of course, at the end of the day, we'll be the ones who get crushed under the weight of Labour's mistakes. Each and every single Labour minister is either rotten to their core or just incredibly stupid.
And it's a strange thing to be picking on Donald Trump when around the world there are all sorts of people who really are dictators, and many countries that don't have any freedom or democracy. And we have, understandably, we have diplomatic relations with them. We have trade with those countries. We try and make allies where we can. But when there are some pretty unpleasant countries in the world that we do business with, to single out Donald Trump for this abuse is absolutely perverse.
Just a few weeks ago, Starmer was in contact with Iraq. How is that government not worse than Trump? Labour just blindly followed their ideological agenda, and that's why Angela Rayner gets away with saying deranged nonsense that nobody wants to hear. If anything, Starmer and the gang probably appreciate it. They're all talk and no action. In fact, they're all talking the exact opposite, hypocritical actions.
Now, this morning, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner spoke really eloquently about how change now begins.
Party. The discipline to make hard decisions and the determination to remain united. And now change begins.
The level of self-righteousness required to talk like that and genuinely believe that they're bringing in change is baffling to say the least. Angela makes quite the fiery speech, but it lacks substance. At the end of the day, it's all just broken promises, lies, and nasty insults. Only those who have nothing worthwhile to say resort to cheap tricks like these. She promises change, but the reality couldn't be further from the truth.
Bills to kickstart Great British Energy and to prevent another Liz Truss disastrous mini-budget. Put buses in local hands and bring rail into public ownership. Conference change has begun.
Yep, that raid on private schools, stripping our poorest pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, people selling up in fear of Rachel Reeves' budget in October, investors leaving in their droves, and debt to GDP at 100%, which it wasn't 80 days ago.
Change has begun, and it's not a good change. Laughable and pathetic. The only change they've brought is to somehow make Britain significantly worse in mere months. Private schools are being targeted, businesses are in shambles. The wealthy are leaving the country in fear of this blunder budget that Labour cooked up, and we're left to suffer. Is this the change she's so proudly and arrogantly talking about? Their hypocrisy doesn't just end there. When under Labour, there's always a two-tier system and double standards.
And I know how hard they've had it after 14 years under the Tories, which is why I will work in partnership with the sector to deliver the change.
OK, well, what about Jazz Athwell? I know I've been banging on about it for a while. Whilst this is all very nice, Angela, and you speak a lot of sense on many subjects, actions speak louder than words. Jazz, the MP for Ilford South, we've been talking about it, the biggest landlord in the Commons with 15 properties. When he was head of the council, he set up a licensing scheme for all landlords, but unfortunately he didn't bother getting licences for all of his properties.
Their own minister is the biggest landlord, who talks a great deal about reforms, and improving housing is somehow the worst of all landlords. Their own rules don't apply to themselves, apparently. Once in power, every Labour minister does whatever they want, and every single promise is thrown out the window. This Labour landlord's case is much worse than you'd expect.
Okay, yeah, again, what are you going to do about Jazz Athwell if you're that bothered about mouldy homes and all of that? The Labour MP Jazz Athwell has not yet been punished for mouldy and infested properties. Now, I'm not sure how Angela can say all of that in her speech with a straight face. They haven't even removed the whip from this MP. He's still a Labour MP and has received no real punishment whatsoever. And now an issue with the nurseries that he owns. If they really want us to take them seriously, actions speak louder than words.
Punishments for everyone but Labour. Accountability for everyone but Labour. That seems to be the new motto that Angela Rayner and Starmer are operating under. They'll hark on about fixing the foundations for hours, but their own foundations are rotten to the very core. The troubling thing is, either they know that they're liars or they're so delusional that they think they're bringing change. I'm not sure which is worse. Actions speak louder than words, and Angela Rayner is only good for words. Sadly, it only works to manipulate some young Labour voters. Some of them actually think this government is doing good.
I think, you know, if we look at our history, we should realise that we have a responsibility to that history. And people actually look to Britain now for answers and solutions. Britain is a leader on the global stage, and I think that it plays a really important role. And I think that we are able to do that with David Lammy as Foreign Secretary and the wider Foreign Office team. You know, you have Hamish Faulkner, who's the new Middle East and North Africa Minister with a lot of experience in the Foreign Office.
In what world are people looking to us for answers? If anything, they're laughing at us for electing such incompetent people. Look at how Elon Musk ridicules Starmer and his gang on a regular basis. Or how Putin treats Starmer as a nobody and disregards every threat. David Lammy is no diplomat and his comments about Trump are ridiculous. Just like Angela Rayner's comments. Calling them both useful is just the height of naivety or foolishness. That's something Angela Rayner is quite well versed in, considering how often she gets humiliated in the parliament.
Of conservative success. Because unlike me, she grew up under a conservative government with a welfare state that provided a safety net, a strong economy and opportunity, while I mostly grew up in Nigeria under a socialist military government that used a lot of the rhetoric that I've heard her promote when she was sitting on this side of the House. So she may not credit Conservatives for what she has achieved, but we'll be taking some of that credit anyway.
This time, it's Kemi Badenoch putting Rayner down and completely destroying her credibility. The socialism that Angela Rayner keeps spouting about just shows how out of touch she is with reality. If Labour loves socialism so much, why don't they move to a socialist country like Nigeria instead of making a mockery out of this nation? Angela is just ungrateful and shamelessly bashing the very foundations of this country that made her so successful.
I'm sorry to tell the Right Honourable Lady that her colleagues, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, and their many advisors have written a manifesto and made promises that are not deliverable. And they've hung them around her neck and said, Angie, you go out there and you sell it.
Angela Rayner has to be the worst salesperson in this country at the moment, considering how miserably she's failing to convince anyone at all. Does she expect sympathy for being tricked by Starmer and Rachel Reeves into believing in the Labour manifesto? It was all a bunch of lies and aggressive manipulation aimed towards winning votes from the public. Kemi doesn't stop there. She dismantles the promises Angela Rayner proudly made to the public.
I think we know who's in charge. And it's not the Right Honourable Lady. She's been stitched up. They've made her the fall guy. They've promised 1.5 million houses by the end of this parliament. That's over 800 houses per day. And we're already 2 weeks in. And as she goes on, day after day, she's going to realise that a backlog is building and there's no way out. But I want her to know that I'm here for her.
800 houses per day? Do Starmer and Angela Rayner think they're playing Minecraft? It's a completely unattainable goal, especially for Labour, and it'll only result in another broken pledge. Sadly for Angela, she'll be the one who had to take the blame for being a monumental failure of policy and execution. The sad thing is, the goal they set is not impossible to achieve.
It's not that 1.5 million homes by the end of this parliament is unachievable. It's that it's going to require the sort of systemic change which they are not ready for. I know they're not ready because of how they voted in the last parliament and how they campaigned in their own constituencies. I'm not going to read out the long list of all the cabinet members who've been opposing planning in their backyard, including the housing minister.
Angela Rayner is not ready for anything at all. She doesn't seem to have a clue about what she's ever talking about, and it shows. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion, but the only downside is that we'll suffer for it. Everything she does will have to bear the consequences of.
I would say to members opposite, They are now your voters and your electorate, and you're going to have to tell them that you're going to do something that many of you promised locally that you would never do not that long ago. But it mostly won't be the problem of the cabinet, who will look after themselves. It'll be the backbenchers, all those bright, shiny faces I see sitting behind the Right Honourable Lady, who are really excited to be here. They haven't started getting those angry emails we've been replying to for 14 years.
All that hateful stuff that Angela Rayner was saying only worked because they were in the opposition. The reality is much different once in government, and she's going to find that out the hard way. And if Angela isn't getting bashed enough, the Labour backbenchers will get just as much heat, if not more, for completely failing the public. The tables have turned and Labour's crumbling.
And they have spent all the time telling the people of this country that they will do better. So here's the record that they are going to have to beat. We built 1 million new homes in the course of the last Parliament while safeguarding the Green Belt. 2.5 million since 2010, despite COVID. We delivered 700,000 new affordable homes, over 172,000 of those were for social rent. We put in place £11.5 billion affordable homes programme. Does she even know yet?
So, will Angela Rayner be able to do better? By the looks of it, the only thing she can do is say outrageous things and then get flamed for them. The goal that she's been given is achievable by any normal government, but impossible for a government as incompetent as this one. It seems that Angela Rayner is on a personal mission to make a fool out of herself. SND, so far she's succeeded. However, it's time that we hold her accountable and demand an apology. That's something you can help out in by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.